May 1941, what would you do if the sky itself began to scream, if men fell from the clouds like broken angels, and the first wounded soldier you touched bled out before you could even say his name? On this morning, as German transport planes droned over Crete and thousands of paratroopers leapt into history, the island became the stage for the world's first full-scale airborne invasion. And for the medics on both sides, this date marked the beginning of a nightmare that refused to end. Because while generals debated maps, the medical orderlies, stretcher bearers, and doctors fought a quieter war amid olive groves, shattered villages, and burning airfields, where screams often replaced orders and blood soaked the white armbands meant to protect them. German Fallschirmjäger dropped near Malim, Heraklion, and Rethymno, expecting swift victory, but many landed directly into Allied fire, hanging helplessly from trees or collapsing onto rocky ground. And it was the medics who crawled forward under bullets to cut tangled parachute lines, dragging men who were still alive, and sometimes discovering they were already dead, eyes open, faces gray. While Allied medical staff faced their own terror as field hospitals marked with red crosses were bombed anyway, forcing doctors to operate in caves, barns, and half-collapsed schoolhouses with dwindling morphine and no anesthesia, where the smell of dust, sweat, and infection mixed with the distant thunder of artillery. Malim airfield, whose capture would decide the battle, medics worked through the night as the runway changed hands, treating gunshot wounds, shattered limbs, and head injuries caused by relentless air attacks, often reusing bandages torn from uniforms because supplies ran out within days. And as the Germans slowly gained air superiority, evacuation of the wounded became almost impossible, turning every casualty into a potential death sentence, while Cretan civilians, defying occupation laws, carried water and hid injured Allied soldiers, an act that would later bring brutal reprisals, adding another layer of horror to a battlefield already soaked in fear. One chilling episode came during the fighting around Galatas, where medics reported treating men in doorways while bullets punched through walls inches from their hands, and when darkness fell, they could hear the wounded calling for help from no man's land, voices fading one by one as no one dared move, a sound that haunted survivors long after the war. And on the German side, medics attached to airborne units faced equal terror as their units were scattered, command broken, and wounded piled up without stretchers, forcing them to choose who might live and who would be left behind, a decision that followed them for life. By late May, as Allied forces were ordered to withdraw toward the south coast, the retreat turned into a running medical crisis, with exhausted medics carrying men over mountains under constant air attack. And at the evacuation beaches near Esfakia, many wounded were left behind, with only a promise that they would be cared for as prisoners, a promise shadowed by uncertainty and fear, while the sea filled with burning ships and the sky glowed red at night, creating a scene survivors later described as beautiful and horrifying at the same time. Strategically, Crete became a German victory bought at a terrible price, with such heavy airborne losses that Hitler would never again authorize an operation of this scale. But for the medics under fire, victory or defeat meant little compared to the faces they could not save, the hands they held as life slipped away, and the silence that followed each final breath. And even decades later, veterans spoke less about tactics and more about those moments of helplessness when courage alone was not enough. So as you think about this battle, ask yourself this final question that still chills historians and soldiers alike. If you were a medic on Crete in 1941, surrounded by fire, screams, and impossible choices, which wounded man would you save first, and how would that decision haunt you forever?